Secretary Chao, one of the top-line goals outlined in the infrastructure proposal would be to reduce red tape and to complete projects faster. As I understand it, DOT is close to finishing implementation of the permitting provisions provided in the last highway reauthorization. Is that correct?
Yes, we've done basically all 31. There are 2 outstanding, which we hope to get out by June.
Okay. But if we did something new that called for more streamlining, you all would be prepared to take that initiative on?
Yes, because the recent reforms in the FAST Act and MAP 21 are helpful, but they don't address multi-agency, multi-department reforms. And we really need to address these cross-cutting issues. So we are finishing up the FAST Act and the MAP 21. And then the President's one federal decision announced August 15th of last year would address these multi-agency, multi-cabinet permitting requirements.
Okay. And so as a follow-up on that, and I'll direct this not only to you but also to Secretary Perry, the chart that you all provided obviously showed how complicated that process is, but could you elaborate on the remaining complexity of the federal permitting process and how the administration's proposal would continue to improve project delivery? You mentioned, Secretary Chao, the multi-agency, cross-agency coordination. Any other thoughts about that to either you or to Secretary Perry?
Maybe I'll take one first. We all want to protect the environment. We're not going to compromise on the environmental protection aspect. But what we are saying is that there are commonsensical ways in which the permitting process can be rationalized. It can be streamlined. For example, much of the permitting are duplicative. A lot of the permitting process is duplicative. They are redundant. They often require surveys to be done sequentially instead of concurrently. And they very often disallow sister agencies, for example, in the Department of Transportation, to share information. Each agency has to go out with their own surveys, and they have to go out with a different time frame so that it's a day or 2 behind. So these studies are extra work that's added on. A very commonsensical way to approach that would be to make these studies go concurrently, allow sister agencies to share information with one another. So these are the kinds of streamlining efforts that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Secretary, anything to add to that?
Yes, sir, and I'll try to be brief here when I talk, and I'm going to talk with some specificity here. As the governor, and a governor that had a state with multiple ports, Beaumont, Corpus Christi, Houston, Brownsville, just to name 4 major. Corpus Christi, for instance. Corpus Christi is a port that has had a project to basically make it more efficient, to dredge it out, to upgrade it, on the books for over a decade. And from time to time you get the federal agencies that are in conflict with each other, as I mentioned in my remarks. And 61% of the crude that goes out of this country goes out of the port of Corpus Christi. And to be able to allow that project to go forward, and they have the money available. This isn't a matter of we're coming up here or they're coming up here and asking for more money. They're asking for federal agencies to basically get out of the way, to give them approval. So I think that's one of the things that the President's talking about that you know, each of you probably have an example in your states of where federal government agencies are sometimes in conflict with each other, or just the absolute slowness of which they move. And I just think it's so essential to this country at this particular point in time, when we have this ability to really affect what's going on in the world because of the geopolitics of oil and gas, and for us to have federal agencies of government that for whatever reason are not being able to give the red light, or excuse me, give the green light to these agencies in these states to go forward and to get infrastructure going.
Certainly doesn't fit a modern economy the way we do things today, for sure. Secretary Perdue, you're the steward of different funding programs that are ensuring that rural Americans have access to broadband. You mentioned earlier in your remarks, and I agree with you entirely, that that is a transformative infrastructure approach to allow people across the country to participate in the technology innovations that we in more populated areas enjoy. I know from several GAO and Inspector General reports that under the previous administration that your department did not effectively administer some of these programs that were focused on broadband deployment. And I'm wondering what you're doing to ensure that the loans and the grants that you make will be used to bring broadband to unserved areas, and that you're taking steps to ensure that money's not being used to overbuild areas that already have broadband. And that was one of the frustrations, I think, that was expressed about some of those programs in the past, that they were overbuilding areas that already had it to the detriment of those that did not.
I don't think there's any doubt, Senator, that the allegations are accurate in that regard. And frankly, what we see in the grant and loan process is you've got some great grant writers out there, and they come repetitively to the bucket looking for more. And I think it's the role of us, not only in USDA, but frankly, all the federal government has not really deployed the broadband money in a strategic way. You've got to start with good facts. You've got to start with the accurate data. I know that we have some concerns, as you all do, over the FCC data map. Sometimes it's self-reported, and we're trying to, again, work interagency-wide with Commerce and with FCC to make sure we've got the facts on the ground of strategically how we need to deploy it. There's a lot of money going out for broadband currently. How do we deploy that in a way in the most needed areas rather than just appropriating loans or grants to people to overbuild, or even in a kind of a greenhouse environment showcasing what can be done? Our interest is in rural America, a ubiquitous system. How do we get there sooner rather than later? This is not an instantaneous thing, but we have to start strategically in how we, again, with the facts and data, a census of where we are and where we want to go, where we want to arrive at, and then a tactical step by step of how we get there. And then we're in the process of doing that. But our rural development team, which is really dispersed across the country, does a great job in many ways with rural electrification and other things. This is an area where we have not done as well as we would like in the past, but I think our people recognize that, own that, and have taken the criticism and allegations very seriously and are working to make sure that we do exactly what you cautions us against, and that's repetitively overbuilding things that and having undue competition in areas where we don't have any in other places.
Thank you. The FCC data maps is another issue I want to get to, but we'll talk about that another time.